So we're going to go ahead and show everybody the agenda, which is we're going to start with introductions. The short presentation is a quick history of the Tahitian dance costumes. After that, Vairea will go into the second part of her presentation, which is how to make a costume, simply put. The third part is the 3 types of Tahitian dance costumes. And then before we get into questions, we'll have a quick discussion about the difference between cultural regalia, and costumes itself. So there's a reason that Tahitian people still use the word costume, even though here, as part of Pacific and Polynesian Americans are, there's a movement to abolish using that word for Polynesian formal wear. But there's a big reason why Tahiti still uses the word costume, and we'll get into that. So without further ado, I will have Alvin go ahead and introduce the workshop, and then Vairea will start.
Sweet. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, I'm gonna mute you real quick, Ryan. What? Okay, now we good. What's good, everybody? My name is Alvin Gubatino, Student Life Relationship Manager here at Skyline College, aka virtual Skyline College. So me and Ryan have been working diligently on this just to provide the same type of cultural lecture, cultural sharing, cultural connection that we've been doing this past year. So I know COVID-19 has been super putting everything on its head, but we still want to be able to serve y'all. So this is something that Ryan and Vi, thank you for being able to do this. I know I asked you like a month or two ago and lightly nudged you into doing it. So thank you for doing this. They've been working really hard to provide a lecture that will give y'all an idea and maybe like take you to Tahiti and give you like a cultural knowledge about this. And I'm super excited to be like just in the back doing all the controls and stuff because this is kind of my thing. So Stephanie, if you need ITS stuff, let me know. I could probably sub in very basically. But yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna just throw it to Ryan and Vi, and they're gonna be amazing. So please enjoy. And I will also be in the chat box, so I'll be working the questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna jump right into our, Vairea actually has a little presentation to share. So we will just go straight in and see. All right.
Cool. Can everyone see? So welcome to the history of the Tahitian dance costume by me. So my name is Vairea Tupana Samn. I am married to the guy just next to me, Ryan Samn. And I'm also a mother of 2.
Oh, did you delete it?
No, it's right here. 2 sons, 2 little handsome boy, and I'm also the artist designer costume, and also a director of the first Tahitian Cultural Center in the United States. Yeah. So I hope with that workshop, I'm gonna push you guys to learn more about my island and all my culture. Tahiti. So we're gonna start. So can everyone see the first picture? Yes. So in the 18th century, according to the testimony of the European explorers, they describe the costume made of tapa, which dress dancer and musician. The women wore a large tapa skirt and braid foliage to tie around their waist like a bell. And of course, they are naked, yeah, buster? Are you okay? Bustier. Sorry. In a very little clothing, the Tahitian dance until the missionary arrived in Tahiti. This nudity horrified the missionary, and they, by the sexual gesture and demonstration, which as early as 1819, prohibit any representation of Tahitian dance. Sorry, I'm kind of like stressing, like, I'm so sorry about that. So on the picture, you can see a woman wear a long skirt. That's a tapa. And they are topless, which is kind of like scary all the missionary before. But for us as a Tahitian person, it's something that we are used to see it. It doesn't like horrify us. It's normal for us to see that. And yeah, so let's jump on the next picture. It will be necessary to wait as early as 1880 when the official holidays of July 14 appear so that the dance could be reintroduced into society. The costumes were more strict at that time. The woman has to wear a tie long dress. And for the men, they have to wear a pants and shirt. So how you see on the picture, the first line, those are the costume changing by the missionary of Tahitian. So we are not allowed anymore to wear, like for women, topless and just a motor skirt, and for men just to wear like a normal material on the waist. That's how, the way the missionary changed our costume.
And then, did you want me to add in about what was going on at the time?
Yeah, sure.
So it's one thing to know is that even though Tahiti today is colonized by France, the original European colonizers that arrived were from Great Britain, and there was a series of wars that happened in the 1800s between France and Britain where they were fighting over that region to add to their empire. So what ended up happening was all of Cook Islands was taken obviously by the British, and they were trying to acquire the Austral Islands south of Tahiti, and they were trying to acquire Tahiti and the Windward Islands. But the Tahitians did not like that their culture was necessarily being oppressed. So they were much more susceptible to, I don't want to say they wanted to go with France, but between the British and the French, they preferred to be under French rule, mainly because they were able to get away with things like Bastille Day, on Bastille Day, which is the French Revolutionary Independence Day, July 14th. They were able to have the celebration and wear their traditional outfits, play music, dance, just for that one day. So that's the origin of the Heiva, is that because the French were now ruling in Tahiti, they were allowing the Tahitians to celebrate their culture for one day only, which was July 14th. And that's why these, they're beautiful, but you gotta admit, they're very awkward costumes because if you look at the materials it's used, it's large, right? Yeah. Looks like tiputas that we're looking at, which are poncho-like coverings. And obviously they had those hot clothes on underneath, hot meaning all dressed up. So you can imagine in 98-degree weather, 100-degree weather, it's killing them.
Yeah, it's killing all people. So I'm sorry, I forget, like, Ryan is going to be here to help me because my English is really...
Your English is great.
Okay, I want to say. And that, like, he's going to help me sometime. Like right now, he helped me to explain a lot of stuff.
Some of her notes that she wanted. It's just with English being her fifth language. Yeah. Sixth language. Sixth language. It's she doesn't explain it as quick as she wants, so I'm just assisting her with her notes. Okay, ready?
Yes.
Okay.
So in the next picture, in 1928, the film Taboo, directed in Bora Bora by Murnau and Flaherty. Did any one of you already see that movie, The Taboo? It's on YouTube. Maybe yes, maybe no. I encourage you guys to watch that movie. It's really nice, and it's really like talking about Tahiti and how we live in Tahiti before. Anyway, displayed the costume in more gradually. So the costume came back little by little. The missionary dress and the long pants and the shirt disappears. As you see on the picture, our costume came back. The moire then became the essential element of the traditional costume in Tahiti. The bust is strapped. The dancer adopt the large moire tapa, called tapiatiti, which is a bra for women. Tu peux changer la photo, chérie? That's how the woman got evaluated. They wear a bra. We call that tapiatiti. So that way there's no more topless. No one can see your little,
Yeah, so Hollywood has always played an essential role in changing the way Tahitian dance costumes looked. In the 1930s with Taboo, we see that they adopted the moire skirt, which is in our culture we call it grass skirt, right? So what was going on during that time was basically a cultural renaissance was happening, and they were trying to gain back their costume and their aesthetic after having it lost to many years of colonization. But actually, the moire skirt isn't from Tahiti. So they did always make moire, but it wasn't that full skirt that you see here. This moire skirt actually came from Micronesia. Micronesia, I'd say Kiribati Island. That's what the Tahitians say in the museum. They have signs up that say that they got it from Kiribati Island. So it's kind of, it was surprising for us to see that was something that was admitted in an official record, but it's good that cultures, they admit that they borrow from each other, because that helps to cut down a lot of dispute in the future for a lot of the descendants who hear one story and someone hears something else. It's good to give credit to the culture that you adopted something from. So we were very surprised to discover that, and we were glad. But I don't know what they decided for Taboo. I just feel like they probably felt that they needed some type of authentic costume, and so that's why they had adopted that look for the movie Taboo.
Yes. So in the next one. So in the 1956, the woman on the picture, her name is Madeleine Moa. She created her group named Heiva. And on that group, she created a magnificent costume which valued choreography based on legend and also on theme. And the dance, then the dance returned to the front of the stage because of her. She bringing back the Odititi, we call that Odititi, the dance, Haitian dance on the stage. Thank you, Madeleine Moa. So the dance group organize and make their own moire, which is the, comment tu appelles ça, chérie? The moire?
It's strung.
They organize and make their own moire. The men cut the branch of puro as much as the woman stripped the stems and removed the bark. After making the puro strong, finally the moire then decorated by the mamas and the young dancer. And here in Tahiti, it's not just one person who make the costume. It's the whole theme of dancer, musician, and also the parents of the dancer who make the costume, the grand costume. Is it freezing? Oh, okay.
No, it's not frozen. So one thing that's interesting about Tahitian costuming is that from the very start of the movement to have privatized groups versus groups that went to the Heiva that were just based on the district where you live. Heiva was the first group in the Tanera'i, which is the old name for the Heiva. Heiva was the first group that took dancers from middle to upper class families from all over the island, and they were chosen for their dance skill or their connections, and the young daughters were chosen to learn and make costumes and dance and perform within the group. But even from the origins in the 50s, we saw in the archives that it was the fathers and the brothers who were going out into the lagoon to pull down the branches, cut down the purao branches, and then strip the bark. And then it was the aunties and the sisters and the women who weren't dancing who worried about stripping it off. It was the older women who were stringing it. And then it was the older women and their daughters who were the dancers to decorate the costumes. So everyone had a job to do. From the very beginning, each person in the family had a job to do to support the young daughter who was dancing for the group. So it's interesting because today in the Heiva, you see, you know, the dads and the brothers
are still
there driving their truck to the big group practice, and they're providing everything that the girl needs, and then the moms come on the costume day and help their daughter to sew or put together the costume. And it's not just about one person, but a family unit to create the costume so that the daughter can represent the whole family.
And the final product became a grand costume. Yeah, work done. So that's why that's after all the work be done by the parents, the young dancer, the dad, brother, mamas. The costume Moritz right here in the picture became a beautiful costume. So before we jump on the how to make your own costume at home, if anyone have any question about the history, please drop in.
You guys could use the chat box if you wish, or you guys can go ahead and just talk. Either is fine.
Yeah.
Epi said, "Beautiful. What an awesome process."
Oh, thank you, Epi. Don't be shy. Don't be scared to ask any question, please.
Epi, looking through the archives, especially in the 1950s, it very much reminded us of looking at the archives from Samoa in the 1950s. The lifestyle back then was not too different from each other at the time, with the whole family unit being involved in these cultural processes. Alvin asked, how long does it take to make a complete piece?
Piece of the whole costume, the grand costume? It can take you to make that for 1 whole month. But for a beginner person, it can take more than 1 month, like 3 or 4 months to make your own costume.
It can be stressful when you're part of a group because they will show you the prototype. Some groups take a long time to show the prototype of what they've decided. And so if you're a beginner and you're just seeing it and they tell you you need to have it before showtime in 2 weeks, it's something you're gonna stress about. Other times I've done the Heiva, I think you as well.
I want to say that, like, before it looked hard and you know, like you have to make your costume on yourself, by yourself and everything. But now, to be honest, there's people who doesn't know how to make their own costume. They pay other people like me or other Haitian people who know how to make costume to do their own costume. So it's more easy now. You can pay someone to do your costume. But for me, I always encourage people to do their own costume so that way they learn how to make the costume and they understand at the same time how to make a costume.
Did someone have a question?
Yeah.
I'm looking here too.
Okay. Did anyone ask a question?
Okay. Yeah, Jerica said that Heiva prep. Yeah, Jerica, it's not for everybody, and you know that. I think that's something that we should say. It's not for everybody to think that they could deal with. When you're actually there, it's very difficult to.
Especially when, like, I'm gonna give an example, like American people who goes in Tahiti for those kind of event. We have a special event every year. When you look at the picture, I just did the story about the costume. It looks like easy to do. It would be like a fun day. Trust me, it would not be a fun day to make your own costume, especially that if you don't understand the language, if you don't speak the language, it will be really hard on you to do it. So a costume, it's not just a costume. You have to learn about the language, how people do the costume, how people talk over there. It's not too scary, guys, but it's not something that you can learn like that. It's not.
That's what Alvin just asked. What is challenging about the process? It's probably that just taking in all of it as an experience, all at once. Mm-hmm.
You have to be tough. I want to say, like, really tough.
Okay.
So, okay, let's go in the next thing. How to make your own costume at home. I have a 4 type of how to make your own costume at home. So the first thing is the sizing. Why the sizing? Like you see on the picture, it's me and my son, my firstborn. His name is Tanera'i. He have a headpiece who fit on his head, and I have mine. Why I say the sizing? Try to imagine my son have my headpiece on his head, and I have his on my head. It will be funny, right, guys? Mm-hmm. So when you make a costume, that's the first thing I encourage people to do, to always look the sizing. If it's a little kids, you have really to pay attention to sizing, because if it's too big or too, like, how can I say?
Too elaborate.
Too elaborate for a little baby, a kid, it's too much. It's too much to see. It give you like too much information about the costume, and not like, it doesn't make the kids look good anymore. It will make like something too much. So that's the first thing. That's the first type I will say, the sizing. Always pay attention and the detail of the size, ready of the person, always. So the second one, how to know how to use the space. Here, when I say the space, if you have a base, let's say the headpiece. If you have a headpiece on you, in front of you, you actually have to know how to use the space. It's so hard to explain in English. I wish you guys understand French. Which example I can so definitely tell you guys. So let's say about that one, the spacing. You have a base here, okay? For you to put all the material on it, you have to think about the comment on dit, the design of your headpiece you want it. So the spacing, it means how to design it. If you want one side to be full or not. It makes sense to you guys? Like this, when you decorate your headpiece or your costume, you really have to know how the design you want it and what the design you want it. Because if you put too much on it, it will be too heavy to carry on your head. If you put too less, it will be like something a kids can do it. Mm-hmm. Just glue it, just, if that makes sense. So on the picture right here, the girl who's wearing the costume, I made the costume. You can see on the headpiece, it looks full. a lot of stuff on it, but actually it's not full. That's the example of spacing. Like use your space. You can come up with 3 things or 4. Let's say rock, because she have rock on it, shells, she had ni'au, and of course the pe'ore. That's for material I use. And I spray everything on the headpiece, on the base. That makes sense, guys?
Yeah, Thomas asked, is there a meaning behind the materials used in the costume?
Yes, it always have a meaning. Her costume, at that time when I make her costume, her theme it was about the fire walk. We have that in Tahiti where you go on a fire rock. It's literally on a fire.
It's lava rocks. Jerica is here. She's done that before. I've actually never.
Yeah, you walk on it with no shoes on your foot, and you have to walk on the fire. It's literally on the fire, and that was her theme. That's why on her costume you can see rock, the black rock. It's the lava rock, the black one, and the red one. It's when the rock is on fire.
Yeah, the burning the coals and all that.
Yeah.
So her theme for the dancer's theme was called the umuti, which is the ceremony that they use to walk on top of fire at this ceremonial place called the marae. The lava rocks were put intentionally in a row and how it looks scattered where you're supposed to walk across it. The coal or the red sand is supposed to be the ashes underneath. Mm-hmm. And then the shells, of course, are beautiful people that are taking that journey through the umuti. Why the base looks raw like that with the braided material up is because they do have these sashes of braided areas and mats where you walk on and off after. And then, of course, you guys see the material that goes up. We call it ni'au. The ni'au is red, representing the flames. And then the white ones that are twirly represent the steam coming off the rocks. So yes, it's very much, he asked if there's rituals associated with making the pieces. There's not so much a ritual associated with the pieces, but the pieces represent the rituals. Yeah, so it's backwards.
Depending on the event you're going to have. So like a costume from, like this event is going to look totally different from a costume for a different event, right?
Yes, correct. They all look different. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Sure.
When you make a costume, it's always based on the theme, of the history you're going to show people. Like the dance will show the movement of your theme, but also your costume will show the theme, the history of what you choose as the theme.
Mm-hmm. I know what you're thinking in French about it. I know
it's so hard.
Figure out the words.
Yeah.
It's okay. You're doing good. Ready?
Yes.
Okay.
So the third type, it's how to use the material. The material, it's like on the picture, it's Ryan. I know. That was Ryan. I made his costume. It was for a competition. So on his headpiece, when you put a shell on it, of course you have to put the shell everywhere, on your necklace, on your belt. Why are you laughing?
Because Thomas wrote about the picture.
So when you make a costume, whatever you put on your headpiece has to be on your necklace and also a belt, if you have a belt. But for a woman, it's gonna be the same thing on the headpiece, necklace, bra. Of course, because men doesn't wear bra, so right?
Yes, this is, and then again, when she says has to, this is her style that she was taught by her teachers. It's what is aesthetically pleasing, because sometimes you'll see a picture from Tahiti where that's not the case. Mm-hmm. We're not saying they're right or wrong, and we're not saying she's right or wrong.
In Tahiti, people have different ways to see.
Yes, there you go.
So mine, I always like to see for women, if they don't wear a necklace, at least whatever is on a bra should be on the headpiece should be on the bra. If they don't have a necklace. If they do have a necklace, it can be both, split it on both.
Right.
Like half on the necklace and half on the bra, if that makes sense. But for a man, it's more easier than a woman because men also wear headpiece, sometimes bell, but it's not like imposed. Sometimes necklace, again, it's not imposed, or sometimes a sash.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more easy on the men because men don't need to cover the
chest.
Mm-hmm. It can be like nothing or also something on it. It's easy on the men, but a woman, it's kind of like, for me, you should have a necklace if the bra is not too decorated. If it's not, you can split the decoration off, or you cannot wear a necklace. I don't want to say no bra, but
some people do it. Yeah,
some people do it no bra.
Okay.
So the last one, that's the fourth type, how to make a costume, is the simplicity. The simplicity is the key of the handsome costume. And on the picture, again, I made that costume for my group. It's an all-boy group. The theme was to Eito. Eito means warrior. One live in Rurutu, one live in Tupuai. Two different islands, and they are fighting for something like a men thing, whatever. So the theme is like talking about that two royal men who travel comment on dit, go en bateau?
They go on their warship, their canoe.
Yeah, to go in other island and everything.
And conquer.
And the whole team I made, it's on a costume too. As you see, there's shell. The blue is representing the ocean. The red is representing the canoe, because before we
genealogy.
Yeah, we do the canoe with the bread and also the genealogy. So simplicity, it's like you don't put too much and also not less.
Yeah, she's done so many costumes. Sometimes it kind of gets all jumbled. This was the story behind this costume was we don't know, we don't question the validity of the story, but what we think is it's a little bit propaganda, because it was about two people from Rarotoa that ended up in Tahiti and learned how to conquer Rurutu and Tupuai. And so it has to do with these Polynesian regions. If you're not part of the community or that culture, it's very hard to try to picture. But what it was is the blue is actually the color that Tupuai always uses. Green is actually the color Rurutu always uses. The braids were the genealogy. The shells were the transition onto Moana Heiva, which is the Pacific Ocean. And then the wood chips that you see were the pieces of the boat. So that's a lot of symbolism in just packed into that costume. And oftentimes you don't have time in the speech, the orero, or you don't have time in the text or the song to explain the costume. But if you're a good student of the culture, you'll see the elements in the costume and understand what it symbolizes based on the legend, if you're familiar with it. The judges, who's a judge at these dance competitions, they should be very knowledgeable and see and understand it even without a fact sheet. And same with the other group leaders. Most group leaders who are very well trained, or their teachers taught them what certain things mean, they'll be able to see it and know right away what the story is based on the costume.
So before we jump on the next step, did anyone have any question about those 4 types of costume? How to make a costume, sorry. Don't be shy, guys, please.
And then you guys could hop in on the chat, or you guys can hop in and just talk.
Anytime. So for me, how I learned to make a costume, a lot of people will say my mother teach me, my father, my grandmother. Me, I didn't learn from my mom. I learned on my own. It's funny though, because I was my mom's teacher. I teach my mom how to braid, how to make a costume. What is that? What the signification of that means and everything. And I don't want to say no one teach me, because I cannot get like how I learned to make a costume in my island. When I ask all those old women how to braid and everything, they all say to me, watch and learn. So that's what I did. I just shut my mouth, sit next to them and watch them. But after they was done braiding, I go home and I do it, and I do it myself without asking them any question about them. That's how it pushed me to learn how to make things, how to make bags, how to make costume, what does it mean? This one, that one should be together and everything. And now I'm proud to learn on my own.
Yeah, a little about that backstory. Today, her mother is known in Tahiti. Her mom's famous in Tahiti. I'll say it. I'm not her son. I'm her son-in-law. So today, her mother's famous in Tahiti because of the work that she does for the Heiva, which is the big exhibition of crafts and tattoo as part of the 5 national Heivas. But in the earlier years, when she started her group and association, Vairea was more the one to kind of run about and go to the different stands and bug the mamas.
I would not say bug.
I would say bug. They told me that you kind of just show up, right? So she'd show up and want to learn, and they'd be kind of mean and bark at her and say, "No, you want to learn, you have to watch." So that's how she'd do it and learn that way. And then later she'd go back and ask questions or let them criticize her, and that's how she perfected her craft. My mother-in-law's generation, they mostly were the generation that focused on religion and church.
Yeah, that's true.
They were not doing the cultural activities that they do today until probably the late 80s, early 90s. So when she was coming up in the 70s, she didn't get time to learn
that. That's true,
braiding.
But also my mother's grandmother was a famous lady who worked on I don't know if you guys know what is lauhala. She was the best braider lauhala. My great grandmother. Yeah, my mother's grandma.
Your mother. Yeah. Yes.
So I like to criticize my mom. I always say to my mom, why the hell you didn't learn at that time with your grandmother? I will be happy to learn something like that, you know?
Yeah, it's almost skipped a generation because her Vairea's grandpas on both sides had their own dance groups, but her parents didn't follow that footstep. Her mom and her dad did not follow that footstep and start their own dance group. Your mom did later.
Yeah,
but
really
not as serious as her grandpa. Her grandpa was like serious into it. He did it from the time he was in his 20s until he was an old man. So Vairea's kind of picking up where they left off. Let's see. Okay, here we go. We have questions. Jerica asked, Vai, what's your opinion and others' opinions on using shells and feathers on one costume?
My opinion is that you can use both in your costume as long that your team are talking about those things. If your team is talking about a bird flying over a little motu with shell, yes, of course you can. But if you ask me what is my thought about a flower, literally a flower grow in the ocean, that's something that I would say are you sick or something like that?
Mm.
You know, there's no rose growing in the ocean. That's I don't. It's
I know
not.
what you're describing. She's describing that it has to go with the logic of nature and what looks natural in Polynesia. That's what it is. Because in Tahiti, she always tells me this, but she always reminds me that none of the Tahitian costumes should have feathers, because feathers were used in the chiefly costumes at the marae. And then feathers are highly used in Marquesian costumes, but the original Tahitian costumes were just tea leaves. So it shouldn't look like that, right, with the feathers.
When you make a costume, I always say that to all my students, when you make a costume, you always have to pay attention to the theme and the history of your theme that you pick for your competition. If your theme talking about bird who's fighting with, I don't know, like another bird, of course you can put feathers, of course. But, you know, it's always about your theme. As long as your theme talking about all the material you use for your costume, you're good. But don't come up with a rose who grow under the ocean. That doesn't exist. I never hear about a story like that, so no.
They're sea cucumbers.
Oh my God.
All right. Ready to get to the next one?
Yes.
Okay.
So, 3 type of costume in Heiva, in Tahiti. Every year, every July, we have that competition in Tahiti for the Tahitian people. They call that the Heiva. The Heiva, it's all the group in Tahiti from everywhere, every city, every island, who want to compete. And at that competition, all the group is led by Tahitian, of course. Before, it was just Tahitian people who can dance. Now, Tahiti opened the door for stranger to dance at that competition on the Heiva.
Outsiders.
The outsider, sorry. Outsider. Outsiders allowed to dance now, this time. Before, it was just for Tahitian people. Why it was just Tahitian people? Because all the dance, all the presentation we're gonna do on that stage on the Heiva, it's the legend from our island, our city, or the history of Tupuna. Tupuna means ancestor, or true story about your life. So it's kind of like come on, this circle, closed circle.
Yeah, it's a closed knowledge system before it became globalized and open to Japan, Mexico, United States, Hawaii, which is beautiful too, but before was a very much closed knowledge system to Tahitians, for Tahitians and other Maohi or Polynesian people.
And now we open our door for outsider, which is good too. I like it. I mean, that's me. I like it. I like to share my culture with people who want to learn. I like to see people, outsider who love my culture, who wants to be part of it. That's really good. Yeah. So at the Heiva, at that time, in July, we also have 3 type of costume who's got judged and imposed by the judge and rules, because this is a competition. I lost my way to say.
It's okay.
So the first costume, it's imposed. It's the patio costume. Patio costume, it's a little material skirt. That's how I call that t-shirt. But my husband always say, honey, that's not t-shirt. We call that material.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So before, in the 1962, the woman just wore that little patio on the waist, topless, and some lay on the front. Same for the men. But now it got evaluated. We still have the patio on the waist. We added a bra and we added a little headpiece. Why we impose all the group to wear that costume, the patio costume, we have a story about it. It's because Tarita. Did anyone already watch the movie Bounty?
The Mutiny on the Bounty, the 1962 version.
If so, yes. The woman in that movie, it's the main actor. She is the one we honor for that costume. Why? Because she gave a little dance for the American. She fell in love with an American guy. It doesn't remind you guys someone? So when she fell in love with that guy, she was dancing with a little patio, exactly on the picture. On the 1962, that's the woman I'm talking about. That's Tarita. She's danced like that for that American guy who named
Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando. And for always keep the memorial about Tarita, we add that costume in a competition called Heiva, the patio costume.
So one thing about this is when we said earlier that Hollywood always has imposed itself on the glamour of Tahitian costumes, this is another example of one that happened in the 60s. The researchers who worked on the movie from the States looked at what Tahitians wore before, and they saw that they wore tapa. But tapa is extremely expensive and hard to get, and they had 200 girls dancing in this film. So what they did was they created the first printed pareo for Hollywood, which was what you see in the photo. The archives showed us that they made this pareo to look like tapa, but it was made out of material, obviously. Mm. And so she wore it short. She wore it from below her belly button, but at least 3 or 4 inches above her kneecap. And so that was another example of when Hollywood imposed itself on a Polynesian costume and then influenced. Now today there's a pareo costume worn in the United States. Almost all solo competitions start or end with a round in which all the girls wear the pareo. But where did that come from? We looked in the archives, because before 1962 they only wore the more.
There was just that more
or the tea leaves. Yeah. They didn't wear the pareo like that prior to the 60s. Not that we've seen. And we looked through quite a few archives, national archives.
And now we use that and honor this lady, Tarita, in a Heiva.
Mm-hmm. And Alisi Tulua said, but before that, it wasn't part of traditional Tahitian costumes. No, it wasn't
not. Because it was imported by British, I want to say, or European.
Well,
it wasn't. Our costume before, it was only the more or the tea leaf, just that, or the tapa. But the tapa was wear for a big event like the dance tapa, or for the royalty to wear. But the tapa was special occasion. But this one, the patio, it wasn't our traditional costume.
They did have long pareos that resembled the Ie Lava Lava. They'd wear it like a missionary shirt and then the long covering at the bottom, but it wasn't for dancing in. Right? Those photos, they do show that.
It was just
for church.
For every day.
Yeah. Not for dancing though. Yes. Is the tapa a fabric? Tapa is a bark from the mulberry tree that is beaten until it's like a fabric material. It's durable. I mean, it's not durable in the sense that you could rip it, but it's durable where if you get it wet, or it could protect you from the elements.
There's a whole way to make that thing become a tapa.
Yes.
It's a long process.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe next time I will show you guys how to make. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
So the second type of costume in Tahiti for the Heiva, it's the vegetal costume. A vegetal costume, it's composed by plant. Here in the States, everyone call that the fresh costume, which I push people to stop calling fresh costume. Why? Because in Tahiti, our vegetal costume, there's 2 types. There's the dry one, and there's also the fresh one.
Or living.
The living one. I mean, the green, the living one. That's why we never call that fresh costume. That's getting the other half of plant, which is the dry one, out. We don't do that. We keep the dry one because before it became a dry one, it was a live one.
Right.
That makes sense, guys? So that's why we call vegetal costume. Example, on the picture you see the live one, right? The dry one, it can also be that one. If anyone knows what is that, it's a lauhala. We call that peore. It's a dry leaf of pandanus. Before it became brown, it was green. And we also use that as a vegetal costume in Tahiti.
Yeah, I guess because when she's gone to solo competitions here, Tahitian competitions in the States, and people refer to a costume as fresh, she'll always say, she's not rude and say it out loud. Sometimes she is. But
I'm not rude.
Most of the time she'll whisper to me like, oh, shouldn't be fresh, because that cuts off a whole genre of costumes, which are the dried out plant costumes. So vegetal means plant. That's the literal translation.
Vegetal means dry costume, and leaf at the same time.
Yeah, it's both. So it's the living flowers, tea leaves that you see in the photo now, but it's the vegetal costume as an entry can also be the dried pandanus, woven, Neo is a vegetal
which
costume are stems, too. Right? Yes. So.
Like the banana leaf, it's green, but when it came dry, it's dry. Like it came like brown. We use that too. The brown leaf, the dry banana leaf for costume too, and we call that vegetal costume too. So I've been telling everyone as I can to stop call that fresh costume, because when you do fresh costume, it's just the live costume. It's for me, it's wrong. It should be called vegetal costume, because if I came up on the stage with a dry costume, that called a vegetal costume, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second type of costume in Tahiti, and why we impose it. That vegetal costume, because in Tahiti we have a diversified plant, and it's also like smelling good, because flower is like giving a good smell. That's why Ryan fell in love with me, because I was in a vegetal costume. I was with a lot of plant, and he fell in love with us. And a little story about the vegetal costume: before they never shower, they didn't know that you have to clean your body and everything. So to hide or cover that smell of, not showering, they wear fresh plant or dry plant. But as long the plants smell good, that's how it cover the bad smell on your body, and that's how women get to attract men to come to them. I know it's kind of sensual, sexual, but that is the true story of the vegetal costume. That's why we add on the competition of Heiva. It's that story.
The costume that you see in the photos in 1989, what the crown right here on her forehead is made of is the heart or the seed of the pandanus. It's the fruit of it.
It smells really good.
Yeah, if you're a participant here from Samoa or Tonga, I know you guys use that too. I know it looks it's very strong, right? It's a very, very strong smell. In fact, when we were on the plane going to her home island, Rurutu, it was just so overwhelming. As the plane's descending down to the airport, you can smell smell those trees from the plane up. You're still in the air. You could smell it. That's how strong it is.
And I want to emphasize that I was pregnant. I was over big. He was sick from that smell, and I was like, "Honey, you don't like it?" And he was almost.
I do.
At that point, he grew up on me.
I do like the smell, but it was overwhelming, because in Tahiti, that's not like everywhere. It's just in places where you guys bring it or make a lei, right? But in Rurutu, because it's all over the island, it was crazy. I never smelled it that strong before. So yeah, she said, Alici said, best smell ever.
Oh, I know that.
Exudes joyous. Yes, it's her favorite smell for sure. And then Ori Tahiti dancers, Desiree and Jerica, do you guys recognize who's in the left photo when she was a lot younger?
It's one of a friend of us from here, from America. She danced for a top group too in Tahiti for the Heiva. And her name is Melanie Amen.
No, not her. Yeah.
On the right.
I know Des and Jerica know who.
And
Melanie
on the
is.
left, it's the famous teacher, I want to say, or the professional. She's the best one. And she's been teaching Ori Tahiti for a long time. And she's still teaching people the Ori Tahiti in Tahiti. She have a big group, and her name is Makal Foster.
Yeah, it's your auntie.
And she's my auntie. I guess we have all that in our blood, the Ori Tahiti stuff. So that was the second type of the costume for the Heiva. The third type and the last one, it's the grand costume. We just see that in the history of the costume. It's the More costume. The More costume, why is the last costume? It's because it took time. I just answered Alvin about that. If you're a beginner person who make a costume, it can take you 3 months or more to make your own costume, because that costume needs to be precise, particular, I say?
Mm-hmm. Particular, yeah.
Particular, and also careful when you do, because the last costume, the grand costume, is the final costume who tell the whole theme, if that makes sense to you guys. So, and also why it's the last costume, it's always because that's our costume before on the 1918, before the missionary came, we wear that costume. It's a memorial about our Tupuna too. I got lost.
That's okay. This costume is the kind of generic and stereotypical look of what Tahitian dance looks like, with the long, quote unquote, grass skirt.
Yeah.
Very Balangi or white way to describe it. Westernized way to say it. Because it's not truly grass, it's bark. But yeah, Alici just said, what is the skirt called? In Tongan, it's manafau. Yes, it is manafau. It's more in Tahitian.
More.
So
that, yeah. Go ahead.
No. That I was just going by your notes.
So for you who want to go to the Heiva, to remember how the costume would be like class or stand, I'm gonna give you an example to always remember. So when you go in a birthday party, the first thing you do is to comment tu dis bonjour?
Say hello, greet. To
greet people, right? So you say hi, oh, the people say welcome, come in, and everything. That's the greeting people. The greeting, first thing to greet people at the birthday party. For the costume to greet the people who came to watch you is the pareo. The pareo costume. You have a little costume with pareo and everything, and you're like, hi, this is my group. Mm-hmm. Welcome in. Patati, give kiss, hug, and everyone got comfortable, mm-hmm. right? It's the metaphor. After the greeting thing and everything, everybody, you have the game at the birthday party, right? You have the game, the candy, the piñata. Everyone got too much comfortable. And so everyone's laughing, drinking, eating, right? So for the costume, It's the vegetal costume. Because when you go on the stage with the vegetal costume, you are like having a party. Happy, laughing, smelling good, flower, fresh, whatever. It's the same thing when you go to a party at the second type. It's the party. And at the end of the birthday party, you have the cake where everyone excited to see the cake, blow the candle and everything, right? So that's why the grand costume is at the end, because it's the finale of the party. I want to say it's the same thing with the birthday party. The cake is the last one. So for the costume, the grand costume is the cake. It's the last one that people want to see you on the grand costume. Exciting to see what's the finale. Oh my gosh, it's a beautiful cake. Oh my gosh, it's a beautiful costume. It always it's telling me the whole team on it. So the metaphor is that when you want to remember how to class your costume
in order,
think about a birthday party. First, the greeting, patio. Second is the game, party, drink, everything, vegetal costume. And the cake,
finale.
It's the finale, it's the grand costume. That's the order of the costume in the Heiva. Sometimes some group mix it up, but most of the time it's always the grand costume at the end. It cannot change because the grand costume is telling you the whole story.
So for Desiree, who just said this is a great way to understand the costume of Heiva, it's the metaphor doesn't tell what the costumes are used for, because it's the birthday thing is just a westernized way to look at it as a metaphor for the order. It's supposed to be for the understanding the order of the costumes. Some groups, as you guys know, start with the fresh costume or the vegetal costume first, because their theme shows that they have to have the hivinau pa'oa first. But always it's usually the fresh costume or the vegetal costume goes with the hivinau pa'oa because of the sexual aspect. And again, you want to smell your best when you're trying to get busy. So that's why they would wear the flower fresh costume to smell good for the pa'oa hivinau. So that's what we found and asked people about. But no matter what argument is made about what costume goes first in the beginning, the grand costume is always supposed to be last. Almost every Heiva group, maybe from the 90s, the 2000s to now, would show that same order. Because if you look at in the 90s, some groups only had one costume for the whole presentation, right? Just like the old days. So that's where that metaphor and mindset comes from. It is mixed with Western ideas. Yeah.
But I think it's a good way for always remember how to order your costume. If you have a group or if you go in a group, I think it's a great metaphor because everyone loves to go in a birthday party, right? So everyone always remember you have to grade, you have to do the game, and of course the cake. It's the same thing with the costume order too.
So we'll take questions. We'll leave this while you take questions, okay. And then other than the questions, we have the last bit.
So please, if you have any question, again, don't be shy. Let me know. I will try my best to answer as possible. You understand me? Or if it's not, Ryan's gonna help me too.
Well, while we're waiting for the questions, we'll get into the very last part of the lecture, which is something that she and I wrote together, but she's gonna have me help to explain, which is the term cultural regalia versus costume. So we put it in the advertisement for the workshop. We also mentioned it in the introduction. As you folks know, there's a big movement in the Pacific American or Polynesian American experience to not call things like the tuinga or the tauvala or hula implements as costumes, because it's improper. It implies that something can be worn as something out of curiosity or something that's not taken serious. There is cultural regalia in Tahiti, such as these hats that are worn at church. for weddings, for parties, for very serious events, even government events. So other than the hats, there are other cultural regalia. We don't have everything with us now, but why the Tahitian dance costumes are still referred to as costumes, because as you know, as the definition of a costume is something that portrays a certain time, era, or a certain culture of certain type of, I don't want to say human, but certain type of ethnic group or race. Yes, the Heiva is a time in July when you can go back to being indigenous for that night. You can go back to being indigenous and the mindset of being indigenous on stage for that presentation, speaking only the language, wearing the costume. Because we mentioned it, Tahiti is still heavily colonized by France. Tahitian language is not an officially recognized language. And they're just starting to now teach in the last 10, 15 years, not even Vairea's time, they didn't teach Regalia in the schools.
There's a costumes. Oh, there's a culture wear.
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct. We have the same thing.
Yes.
For Tongian, it's Tauvala, not a costume. It's same. The tapa, we have that dance called the tapa dance. It's just a woman who dance for the
king.
The king. And that girl, I want to say, she should be a virgin, and she has to wear that tapa. Just her, not everyone else, not like me. It's I totally agree with you. So we have the same thing too. Yes.
Yeah, because when you step in Tahiti, the mindset is when you step into this costume, you're representing the past Tahiti, not French Polynesia today, which is a French colony in the Pacific, in which that's not part of real life. Now, Vairea and I would disagree with that because she's from Fa'a district, where I've also spent most of my trips, even before being married to her. And in Fa'a, the culture is very much alive still. Almost every family in Fa'a still speaks Tahitian as a first language. Almost all the signs for the city hall and everything are in Tahitian. But once you step out of Fa'a, say into Papeete and other areas of Tahiti, that's not necessarily the case. And also the presence of people from France, especially in the military base in Arue, in the capital in Papeete, in certain places in Punaauia or Mahina, different districts that are the colonization is very much more apparent than where she's from in Fa'a. So I have a different viewpoint because of how my teacher's mindset was. She has a very different viewpoint, similarly, because her family is very much still Tahitian. I wouldn't say they're anti-French, but they very much carry their identity. Tahitian's their first language. The dancing and all that is not seen as an extracurricular activity, but part of their life. But not all Tahitians live like that. Most of them are living between the two cultures. So that's what the whole thing is about Tahitian costumes, why that word is still being used in this area of Polynesia, because it's very much still a costume mentality for the dancing, as opposed to the cultural regalia such as the hats or the formal wear for weddings or church. So I hope that answers that question, because we wanted to address that. We see that there's those publications made in San Mateo County with the Polynesian students wearing their regalia, and it says, "My culture is not your costume." Mm-hmm. We totally agree with that. Yes. But we also want to mention that all these costumes in Tahitian dance, they represent the past before colonization. They represent a time era before the church came, before the Westerners came.
They got colonized.
Yes, so it's very much a costume because Tahiti can't express that this is their like national wear for the whole country because they're still under France, if that makes sense. So I hope.
Got it.
Yeah, we hope that answers your question. And as we step into our role of being less of just this couple that we dance together or go back to her island in Tahiti and dance, and more into this role of being the Tahitian Cultural Center. We want to bring those conversations to light, which are very important to us. What the Hawaiian, Samoan, and Tongan community, who they're the Polynesians that live here, what those thoughts and feelings and pedagogies are, we want to also make that part of the Tahitian Cultural Center, because that experience is very important to us. So we wanted to make sure that that was part of the workshop. But yeah, it's just time for questions. I'll get out of Vairea's hair. She doesn't need me for her notes anymore.
No. Tu restes là.
Okay. She still wants me here, so.
Ouais, ça fait peur.
Yeah, let me know. Just go ahead and type
C'est
them.
fini, hein?
Yeah, we are running up. We're past our time, but
I
you're
hope
welcome to stay and
everyone
ask
enjoy
questions.
the history of the costume. Ryan, where the hell are you going? Sorry. And yeah, I want to thank Skyline. I want to thank Alvin and Ryan and the student to consider me for this workshop. I really appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys enjoy. I know my English. I'm still working on my English. I'm still working on it, and I hope still work with you guys. I enjoyed today. It was fun. Even I stressed in the beginning, which I always do, but I really do enjoy with everyone today and enjoy all the questions, and hope in the future can show you more about my island, Tahiti, and all my culture.
And then for everybody here, we just want to remind everybody that tomorrow at the same time, 1 o'clock to 2 p.m., we are featuring our next workshop, which is hosted by the ASSC and Samoan Solutions, so Epi Amavai and Fanga Savili Misa, talking about Samoan poetry and songwriting. And then on Thursday, we're very honored to also have the group Kuata's Performing Arts. So a workshop led by Kuata Vainikolo and his group. They are going to talk about the history of Tongan dance.
Please, God, enjoy. If you want to learn about Pali people, it's the time to go and jump tomorrow and the next day and learn about Samoan Tongan, because today you just learned about Tahiti, and I hope I push you guys to fly in Tahiti. I don't think it will be early because the COVID-19, all the airplane is done. Like no one can fly to Tahiti, but I really hope you guys enjoy the history of the costume from Tahiti in Tahiti, and hope to work again with you guys.
Yes, and happy Pacific Heritage Day.
Happy Pacific
Month. Heritage Month. Yes.